Okay, so first of all, I wanted to look at a couple Synastry charts of like celebrities who actually been dating themselves, or they've been dating for a while, and toxic relationships. So I have both. So I have the toxic celebrity couples, and then I have the good ones, I guess. Yeah. So let's just take a look at some of them that I found. So starting off with, of course, our infamous Chris Brown and Rihanna. Let's go straight to that. So, okay. I'm going to put Rihanna's natal chart. And then you go to AstroSeek, find her chart. You go to partners. Chris Brown is going to come up. Okay, we're going to click here. So now we have this chart. You can also like find this somewhere. So you on AstroSeek, duh. Okay, so same thing. I always, when I take a look at a chart, obviously I like to look at these red lines or what's like sticking out from the bunch. So I got a couple things sticking out, like we have Saturn and Venus kind of making a big square, whatever. Also, I start looking for angles. So I start looking at these black lines, and I start seeing what's on there. So like for instance, Rihanna's Mercury is on Chris Brown's descendant line, which is important because the Mercury in her chart rules how she communicates and works. So they work together. Remember, she's a Aries rising. So Mercury rules her third and her sixth. He's a Leo rising. So Mercury rules the second house of money and the 11th house of the public image for him. So that kind of makes sense, right? Because that Mercury is, basically their work that they had. So things, I like to look at that. So then I look at their, like, for instance, this is the Midhaven. And this is Chris Brown's sixth house, fifth house. If you notice, this is his. He's the second layer. And this is Rihanna's public image. And remember, he has pending karma with her. So he publicly, hit her, obviously. Okay, but that doesn't tell me why he hit her, or a reason why there was domestic violence. Okay, so again, I'm just looking at the angles so they can tell me a story. So notice how this is her Midhaven public image. His Saturn sits there. So obviously the government got involved because they had to like get police reports and stuff like that, blah, 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 right? Again, going around. So this is the fourth house, which is interesting because I think this happened to one of their parents. I'm not sure. Chris Brown said that this happened to his mother, which is funny that they have Pluto in seventh house kind of here. So I thought that was interesting. Then I keep going. They look good together. So they look like, so this might be why they got part of fortune, ascendant, and lift together right here. So that's why I like to go through these little black lines individually. So then again, we're going to do our handy dandy. Going to go down, find Neptune. We always find Neptune. Now, let's see what Neptune's doing to see what kind of soulmate energy they had. So his Neptune, which is Chris Brown, remember, he's a Taurus. So Taurus have an unavoidable karma with their seventh house anyways. So Neptune is squaring her moon, her emotions, her body, because moon sits in her first house, is the ruler of her fourth, whatever. So they have like an instinct like this. The square is different. Again, you want to go to the same website, Okay, so, okay, sorry, I'm gonna have to cut that out. So there's a tendency. That's why you gotta read the squares because the trines are great, but the squares could be a little, problematic a little bit or action oriented. So there's a tendency to misunderstand or misread each other's signals. So you will have to spend more time processing hurt feelings or perceiving slights. Be careful for addictive behaviors and habits or too stressful environments. So obviously they were in this stressful environment. I think one of them do suffer from addictive personality. So because look at this 12 degrees. I don't want to go there, Chris Brown, but we've seen it. We're not dumb. Neptune squares is her body again. Maybe they're too different. They first meet, they get the wrong impression. They literally tell you. Which I don't even know. I think they didn't like each other at first, or they were forced to be there. Remember when she started out, when Rihanna started, Chris Brown already had like a fan base that was going off on him. You know, he already had his fan base. So then we have Neptune square, the Venus. Again, this is still a soulmate aspect. Even if it's rough, you want to still do the same thing. Venus is still in her first house. Venus rules her relationships. So this is important. Venus is her seventh house, which is funny because she's with a Libra. Hello. We're going to put Synastry. You got to put Synastry. Again, it comes up. You can, I like T, you know, we talked about this. It says emphasizing or withdrawing themes of describe above. Venus needs to be aware that if he or she falls in love with a romantic ideal instead of his or real partner, Neptune will most likely retreat. Venus needs to be aware that if he or she falls in love with a romantic ideal instead of his or her partner. What? We're going to have to read the real thing. I'm sorry. I had read that twice. Still didn't understand what they meant. So let's go look at that. Hang on. Let's see if we find a square. So it's okay because I'm used to kind of like skimming through this. So I kind of see it right away. There we go. This is a fairy tale. Okay, when the couple first meet, they feel as though that they met the one. It does, but there's also, however, like a trust may be broken or some type of friction. It makes sense because the square, there's some type of flaw. Venus is her seventh house and her desires. He may not completely fulfill them because it's an illusion, okay? Now, her Neptune is trining his sun, so he might have aesthetically looked like somebody she could be around or familiar. His sun would sit in the second house, so she would feel comfortable with him because the second house is like our family people. They remind us of our family. And then we have Mars opposing Neptune. This could be the reason why the arguments happen. So his Mars opposed her Neptune. He didn't really understand her, and this is probably why he got violent. I want to say that as well. Okay, Mars is the ninth house for him. Mars also rules his fourth house of emotions. So that's important because he's a Leo rising. Then we have the Saturn conjunction, stuff like that. Also, let's see. I also check when there's a domestic abuse. You always got to check Mars, stuff like that. Let's just see if we see any type of pattern. So we have Mars opposing Mars, kind of. Sort of, slightly, okay? She has a better Mars than he is, so she exudes masculine energy a lot better than he does, which could be an uncomfortable feeling for men that are insecure, especially because he was growing up around that time. Let's see. So there's an opposition there. This could cause the friction. We have their moon, which is her body. Again, the moon rules her fourth house, and it's in her first house, and it's squaring him again. His Mars is in the 12th house. So people that have Mars in the 12th house, they get to be stuck in their ways. Some kind of like their idea is their way, no other way, basically. So positive things, sexual attraction, I guess. And this is also kind of an interesting one too. This is kind of harsh. When Mars opposes the person's Saturn, that's important because that's like both bad guys, you know? So sometimes it's good for building things, and the other times it could cause things like this. So we're going to go look at it. See, what did they say? All right. No, they don't got anything. Let's see what they got going over here. Okay, so they're opposing control, power struggles, attacks, and suppression of self-worth and self. Yeah, this is where the attacks or suppression. So this is the attack. This is the reason why the attack happened. And it's only 3 degrees. That makes sense. So Rihanna has it at 0 degrees, which is like unavoidable, karmic. She can't, like, these government things can always happen to her because of that 0 degrees, which makes sense because she's kind of like from a different country. So yeah. So I just wanted to say that makes sense. Sorry, guys. I'm being a dickhead. Okay, up next, who do you have? So we have, okay, Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson. Let's look at that. So let's look at Pamela Anderson. There we go. We go to Astro Seek because they do all the work for us. Thank God. You find Tommy Lee. You hit display, and we got it. Okay, so again, she has her chart. He doesn't. She's in Gemini rising, but he is a Libra sun. So let's just go off that. First thing that we do is we take a look at the lines. Yes, that we have a big square to either, I think the sun, to their sun square each other. Makes sense. She's a Cancer. He's a Libra. They're 10 signs away from each other, whatever the case may be. Then we go into our angles. So I have nothing really, none of his planets are touching any, this angle right here. Okay. None of things touching this angle right here. Maybe Venus, because, well, Venus, not really, because, hello. Her Jupiter has his Rahu, which is kind of interesting, or his North Node, whatever you want to call it, because they got together real fast. Jupiter rules their seventh house of partners, and they moved real quickly, which makes sense. What else we have? Nothing else. Nothing is around the black lines. Let's see. I like to look at planets that are like conjoined like this. Those are significant. Uranus is conjoining her part of fortune. Maybe he benefit from her. I'm not too sure. I don't really know their story. Can't lie to you. But this is the Venus conjoining Neptune. This is why I felt like they were meant to be. Okay, so let's keep doing things. What are we gonna do? So I think they had. I don't really know their story, but what is it? Pamela. Let's go look. Maybe they tell us here, so we don't have to look it up. Rihanna, Chris Brown, Pamela. There we go. Look. So Tommy Lee first met New Year's Eve, and after 4 days of knowing each other, the two got married in Cancun. Yes, we gave blood, sniffed out a marriage license, and were on the beach getting married before the day was over. Gosh. Okay, instead of wedding bands, we went for something more permanent, tattoos of our name of each other's fingers. However, things started going downhill for the couple in 98 after Lee was arrested for hitting Anderson while he was holding their infant son. For spousal abuse, child abuse, and unlawful possession of a firearm, so he got arrested. Okay, so let's go look at that. There we go. So this is him. So Mars would be guns, obviously. So he has a Mars in Cancer, which makes sense why he abused her. A Mars in Cancer tend to have abusive tendencies, especially because it's in his fall, it's in the feelings, and it's in a man's planet. That's kind of a lot. It's hard for them to control their emotions. FYI. For Gemini risings, Venus would have children. Well, Venus would be the children, which he has a son, Lilith and Mercury, retrograde, by the way, in her fifth house, which would make sense that they would have a kid together, or that she felt like she wanted to have a kid with them. It also makes sense that Lilith is in here because he kind of abused her while, like, again, he was abusing her while she was holding the sun. I think when men do have a Jupiter retrograde, it's important to look at because their philosophies could be deterred or something's wrong with their philosophy. Jupiter is the man's planet of how he believes men should carry themselves. So if his is retrograde, there's something that he needs to work with in himself. And mind you, it's next to Chiron. So there's like a wound of him being a man, whatever the case may be. Okay, so let's see what else we're gonna go down here. So he abused her. So let's look at what Mars is doing, just because of that. Because we already know Venus is conjoined, so that's great. So we have Mars a square Mars. Okay, so that makes sense because she has a Mars in Libra and Cancer. So this was like publicly being displayed to the world, so they would see it. Two different egos conflicting with each other. Mind you, they're two fall Mars, so they were like probably high-tempered people who can't control it, right? Okay. So she has a moon in Aries. Moon rules her sun. Mars, again, this is a square causing sexual tension and a like aggressiveness against each other. I don't know what his Mars, but this would be either Mars is the planet of relationships for Libra placements. He's a sun in Libra, so that's why I mentioned it. Let's see. Mercury is her body. So that's important because she's a Gemini rising and is conjoining Mars. So this is probably where the reason why the abuse happened. I still don't know his rising, but my idea of why it happened. And then we have Neptune. Again, Neptune. This is similar because Rihanna also kind of had this with Chris Brown. I think, do I still have this open? Yes, I do. I just opened it up again. Let's see. Let's show you. So we're gonna put Mars, and Rihanna and him had this. I think. Yep. Look, he has Mars in Cancer opposing. Mars in Cancer opposing her Neptune. Similar to what she got, Pamela Anderson also has Mars trine Neptune, which I believe this is the reason why the argument or the abuse happened for sure. Okay, so those are kind of toxic relationships. Let's do maybe another one. Who else do we have here? Jada. Well, I just picked people that I wanted to. Okay, so Jada Smith and Tupac. Maybe I should do a whole video on them. We're gonna save this one. We'll come back. I'm going to do another video on Jada and between Tupac and Smith and Jada and Smith, because those two people, they are important things to look at, because she lose a lover and then she's like with this guy forever. So we're gonna go talk about that in the other one when I make another video. So I did Pamela Anderson and Rihanna. Okay,